Okay, so you know how this works by now, right? You send us the stuff you're reading, and we kind of dive in and pick out the most interesting parts.
Yeah.
And yeah, we get those aha moments for you without like having to wade through, a whole bunch of stuff.
Basically, we're giving you a shortcut to a solid understanding of whatever you're grappling with.
Exactly. And this time around, it looks like we're heading to Culver Creek
Uh-huh.
because the source you guys sent us is Looking for Alaska by John Green.
Oh, yeah. Classic coming-of-age story.
Right at the start, we meet Miles Pudge Halter. And he's just arrived at Culver Creek Preparatory School. And these early pages, I mean, they're just so key for everything that comes after.
They really set the stage for the whole, emotional landscape of the story.
Totally. So for anyone who hasn't read it in a while or maybe hasn't gotten to it yet, no spoilers beyond these first few sections.
Absolutely. We'll keep it spoiler-free.
So the story kicks off with Miles leaving this like super mundane life in Florida to go to this boarding school in Alabama, right? And right away, there are these few ideas that just jump out at you, like his like deep yearning for something more.
Yeah, this kind of existential hunger.
Yeah, and then there's that initial shock of this like whole new world he's stepping into.
Right, it's like he's entering a different universe.
And of course, we get those awesome character introductions. Chip, the Colonel Martin,
And who could forget Alaska Young?
Alaska Young.
She's such a force of nature.
Totally. So for this deep dive, we really want to explore those first steps of Miles' journey with you guys.
Yeah.
Right? So we're looking at the people he meets, the whole vibe of Culver Creek, and how his perspective starts to like, shift.
It's all about those initial impressions and how they shape his trajectory.
Yeah. And hopefully by getting into those early moments, we can maybe uncover some insights that'll resonate with you guys too, especially if you've ever like, gone through a major life change, or if you've ever just felt that pull towards something more, something deeper.
That search for meaning that we all kind of experience at some point.
Exactly.
Oh.
Okay, so let's get right into it. You highlighted Miles's reasons for leaving home and that going away party. Well, you could practically hear the crickets chirping, right?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of a bust.
Artichoke dip and champagne poppers, and like hardly anyone shows up.
What's interesting, though, is that contrast between his parents' almost like exaggerated pity for him and Miles' genuine lack of disappointment. They seem to expect him to be, all bummed out that his so-called school friends bailed on him.
Yeah, it's like they're more upset about it than he is.
But he's actually relieved when only these two kind of, bland acquaintances show up. It's like his expectations for his old life were already so low that even a lame party exceeded them.
He was already checked out.
Totally.
And then we get that whole thing about his dad's history at Culver Creek. It wasn't just some random school he picked out of a hat, was it?
No, definitely not. There's this whole family legacy there. His dad, his uncles, all their kids. It's like this romanticized vision of a more exciting past.
Like Culver Creek is like, hallowed ground for the Halter family.
Exactly. And there are all these stories about his dad being this like legend on campus, acing his classes, but also, stirring up some trouble.
Yeah, sounds a lot more appealing than, suburban Florida predictability.
Right. It's like this inherited narrative that he's trying to live up to.
Totally.
Yeah.
But the real driving force, the core of his motivation, is that quote from Francois Rabelais. I go to seek a great, perhaps.
Such a powerful line.
It becomes his personal mantra, right? Like it's the banner he's marching under as he leaves his old life behind.
Yeah. It's like his declaration of intent.
You're not going to wait till he's old and gray to start living a life that's full of meaning and excitement.
Just chasing that great perhaps right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it immediately creates this tension between that ordinary reality he's leaving and this like, exhilarating uncertainty of what's to come.
It's that pull between the familiar and the unknown.
Right. And what's interesting is how that single line, I go to seek a great perhaps,
Yeah.
kind of like calms his parents down, at least for a minute.
Yeah, it's like they get it. They understand that this great perhaps isn't going to just materialize in his current, stagnant social circle.
Too big for that.
Exactly.
So he finally gets to Alabama and boom, he's hit with this wall of like intense heat and humidity.
Talk about a sensory overload.
It's a far cry from air-conditioned Florida. He even has this like kind of funny fear of spontaneously combusting.
Yeah, he's definitely not in Kansas anymore.
You can practically feel how uncomfortable he is through his descriptions.
It's like that feeling of stepping off a plane in a tropical country and just being hit with that wave of heat and humidity.
Totally. And then he gets to his dorm room, room 43. And any romantic notions he might have had about boarding school life, they're like instantly shattered.
Poof. God.
He's probably picturing something grand, right? Like plush carpets and antique furniture.
Yeah, like something out of a movie.
But instead, he walks into what sounds like a prison cell.
Cinder block walls, linoleum floors, like super utilitarian furniture.
It's more like a hospital room than a historic boarding school.
The one saving grace is the private bathroom.
Right. At least he has that.
Small victories.
And even his parents' goodbye. It's just kind of like perfunctory, you know? There's not a lot of emotion there. He even thinks about how maybe a trial separation after 16 years was long overdue.
He's ready to break free.
Totally. Then he has this like brief moment where he's thinking about all these famous people who went to boarding school. You know, all these people who went on to do these amazing things.
It's like he's looking for inspiration in those stories.
Right. And it just fuels his anticipation, especially when he starts thinking about meeting his roommate, Chip Martin. He's even like half joking about hoping Chip brings an arsenal of fans because the lack of AC is already killing him.
Yeah, that Alabama heat is no joke.
And then Chip arrives.
Yeah.
And their first meeting is, well, it's pretty unique to say the least.
Yeah, Chip's talent is this completely monotone recitation of countries.
It's so intentionally boring. It's
Yeah.
almost impressive.
It's like he's trying to be as uninteresting as possible.
And it immediately creates this contrast with Miles's own self-proclaimed talent.
Yeah.
Which is knowing people's last words.
A bit morbid, but definitely intriguing.
He even throws out Henry Gibson's last words as an example.
On the contrary,
Yeah, Chip's like kind of weirded out by it, but he also kind of appreciates it.
it's an early sign of their, like, contrasting but also complementary personalities.
And we quickly learn some stuff about Chip's background, too. He's there on a scholarship. And he specifically chose Culver Creek because he wanted to, like, bury himself in books.
It's a bit of an escape for him.
Yeah, because at home, his dad used to physically abuse him with books.
Heavy stuff.
It's like a really intense revelation right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes you understand why he might be seeking refuge in this, like, academic world, away from all that toxicity.
It's like he's reclaiming books as something positive in his life.
And then his parents' divorce adds another layer of complexity to his situation.
He's carrying a lot of baggage.
And right away, he starts giving Miles these warnings about navigating the creek, like both the students and the teachers.
It's like he's giving him a crash course in Culver Creek survival.
Totally. And it hints at this, like, intricate social hierarchy and these unspoken rules that Miles probably never even imagined.
It's a whole different world than what he's used to.
And then there's Chip's way of unpacking. Just like tossing everything into drawers with zero care.
No folding, no organizing, just chaos.
It completely clashes with any ideas Miles might have had about, boarding school decorum.
Chip's not about following the rules.
Right. And then there's the creation of the duct tape coffee table.
Right.
Which is basically just Miles's trunk with a duct tape label on it.
Pure Colonel ingenuity.
And his bluntness about Miles not being his entree to Culver Creek. Like he's not trying to use the new kid to climb the social ladder.
He's keeping it real.
It's refreshingly honest.
It establishes this foundation of authenticity in their relationship right from the start.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then comes that first encounter with Alaska Young. During this, secret midnight cigarette session by the lake with Chip.
Talk about an entrance.
She just appears out of the darkness.
Like a mythical creature.
And she immediately hones in on Miles' fascination with last words.
She's drawn to the same things he is, but in a different way.
And then there's that whole dramatic recitation of Simon Bolivar's supposed last words from the general in his labyrinth with a cigarette and everything.
She's a total drama queen.
It's captivating. She's like larger than life.
And then she hits him with that question about the labyrinth.
The labyrinth is the labyrinth living or dying. Which, is he trying to escape the world or the end of it?
Deep stuff.
It's like this super layered philosophical question that she just throws out there so casually.
It gives you a glimpse into her mind. Like she's constantly wrestling with these big ideas.
And then she admits that she hasn't actually read all the books in her life's library, but she's planning to.
She's all about the pursuit of knowledge, even if she hasn't quite caught up with herself yet.
And the colonel immediately labels her as crazy.
Yeah.
But then he mentions that she has a boyfriend.
Boundaries are being set.
It's like a warning sign.
Don't get too close.
And then things take a turn for the worse for Miles. Because he gets pranked pretty badly.
The weekday warriors strike again.
They duct tape him and throw him in the lake.
Not exactly a warm welcome.
The colonel's reaction is almost like, blasé, like, it happens to everybody.
It's a Culver Creek rite of passage.
But Miles is understandably shocked.
It's a rude awakening.
And Alaska's reaction is so strange. It's like a mix of amusement and maybe even a little bit of guilt.
Like, she knew it was gonna happen.
Yeah, it's like she's both in on it and observing it from a distance.
She's hard to read.
And then the colonel's like, I'm going to deal with those bastards.
Yeah.
But he also makes it clear that he's not going to rat them out.
There's a code of silence at Culver Creek.
They handle their own business.
It's like a mini society with its own rules.
The next morning, the colonel declares war.
Time for payback!
And Miles starts to get his first impressions of the academic side of things.
It's not exactly what he expected.
The dress code is super casual, like girls are showing up to French class in pajama shorts.
Comfort over style.
Not exactly the formal atmosphere he was probably imagining.
And to make things even more interesting, Alaska's in his French class.
But she totally ignores him.
Cold as ice.
But even though she's being all distant, there's still that undeniable attraction.
She's like a puzzle he can't solve.
And Madame O'Malley's French the sec class. It's a wake-up call for Miles.
His Florida French clearly didn't prepare him for this.
And then in biology class, the colonel casually points out Longwell Chase as one of the guys who threw Miles in the lake.
Target acquired.
The wheels of revenge are in motion.
Slowly but surely.
And we start to see those early friendships forming. The whole sneaking cigarettes in the shower thing.
Bonding over rule breaking.
It's like this little act of rebellion that brings them closer.
And then we learn that the colonel can tie a tie, a skill he picked up from his otherwise lousy father.
It's this little detail that just adds so much depth to his character.
He's full of surprises.
And then Sarah makes that comment about the colonel's wrinkled shirt.
A little jab at his fashion sense.
But it's clear they have this, affectionate and playful relationship.
They're good friends.
And then Miles has that moment of distraction in Dr. Hyde's Buddhism class.
Lost in thought.
He's pondering interconnectedness and the whole trees-forest analogy.
He's a deep thinker.
But it gets him kicked out of class.
Sometimes curiosity comes at a price.
And finally, they discover the smoking hole. This, secret spot under the bridge.
And their own little haven.
It's where they can escape the rules and just be themselves.
A place to unwind and let loose.
We also get a taste of the Culver Creek culture through the basketball games.
The Culver Creek Nothings versus the Deaf and Blind School.
Their cheers are something else.
Unique is one way to put it.
And then the colonel gets ejected from the game against the Christian school for taunting.
He just can't help himself.
He yells, "You're much bigger, but we are smarter."
Classic Colonel.
And then Dr. Hyde gives Miles that advice about being present.
A little wisdom amidst all the chaos.
It's a reminder to actually experience the moment you're in.
To be mindful.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into looking for Alaska, what really stands out for you from these early chapters?
For me, it's how Miles's initial experiences are so different from what he expected.
Yeah, he's not getting that romanticized boarding school experience.
The dorm room, the hazing. It's all a lot more intense than he probably imagined.
But we also see those key friendships forming.
Especially with the colonel in Alaska.
They're such compelling characters.
Yeah.
And they pull Miles into this world that's so much more vibrant and challenging than the life he left behind.
And the culture of Culver Creek itself. It's so unique and rebellious.
There's this constant tension between following the rules and breaking free.
And at the heart of it all is Miles's search for that. Great, perhaps.
His early encounters, both the good and the bad, they're all shaping his journey.
It makes you wonder if Culver Creek will be the place where he finds it.
Or if it'll throw even more obstacles in his path.
It really makes you think about those pivotal moments in your own life.
Those times when your expectations clashed with reality.
How did those experiences shape your own great, perhaps?
What unexpected friendships or environments changed your course?
It's often in those initial, sometimes jarring encounters that the most profound changes begin.
That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into looking for Alaska.
We'll catch you next time.
See ya.